building the business turns you into a different kind of human being.
Realize that failure is a part of the journey.
I think there's hope out there for all of us.
They say procrastination be the assassination of destinations. That's why we out here grinding with no association with haters and them other crabs trying to put us down. Pest badges in the house, boy, don't clown. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up. You can do whatever you dream of. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up. You can do whatever you
Welcome back to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. I'm always excited to talk to people, but today I'm really excited. Lee, I think we met, we were in Arizona a month ago now, I think.
Yep. First time meeting in person. Yeah. Arizona, AZ PPO.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And we had lunch together, had some good conversations, and we've talked a lot since then. So it's just really cool. But today I have Lee Thompson. He's a CEO, president of Trivie Pest Brokers. Look, I almost messed it up as it is. We'll talk about that. But he's a former vice president, mergers and acquisitions at Certus Pest Control. The last time I saw Certus on the PCT Top 100, they're close to 100 million. So I'm assuming that they're over 100 million now. So obviously a very large company, but so you have a lot of knowledge in the industry, a lot of expertise on mergers and acquisitions and just the pest control in general. But yeah, man, welcome to the show.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here and love what you're doing. Love watching the episodes and just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's cool. Like I said, we just finally got to connect in person, got to meet, talk for a while. And it was just good to get to know you in person. And of course, I'm always working deals in the back end. So it's just, I'm excited like what the future looks between our relationship. I know we'll have some good things going on there, but it's pretty cool. So I always start the podcast out the same way. So if you watch the show, you probably know how this is going to roll. But if you and I, junior, senior in high school, who's Lee Thompson in high school? I know we talked a little bit about this in Arizona, but.
Yeah, man. Lee Thompson in high school thought he was going to be, football superstar and tackle the world. If you would have asked me going through but where I'm from, there's not a lot to do. Just small town, Thomasville, Alabama. Went to high school in a smaller town, Groveville, Alabama, right down the street from where I lived, and went to a really tiny high school and, but absolutely loved it. I went to Groveville Academy. It's now Clark Preparatory School. And I look back, my friends and I from high school get together once a year. We've done it for years, just the guys from my class, because we were such a small, I graduated with 30 people. And so most of the guys in my class, every year, we go to a buddy's camp and we kind of just talk about what's going on in our lives and that sort of thing. And I wouldn't trade my high school experience for anything. I wish my kids could experience it because it was just small town living at its finest. Everybody played football, basketball, baseball. We had a powerlifting team, which is where my love for powerlifting and weights, came from back in the day. And so, but did I ever think I'd be in pest control? Absolutely not.
Me either.
I actually ran into a friend from college that I hadn't seen in probably 20 years. And man, I always wanted to be a coach. One of my brothers coached for a while, just my love for sports and things like that. And he was like, "You're not coaching somewhere?" And I was like, "Well, I've actually coached a lot, just not in sports, more on the people side." And so I think when you look at that relation of sports coaching to coaching teams across, my career, that correlation there. So while I thought I was going to be doing something different, post high school and post college, it actually isn't that different. It's just a different aspect of it. So
sure. Yeah, it's super cool. Obviously I love coaching too. Coached wrestling team for a long time. And I get to coach my daughter. And then of course, my team here at Pest Badger as well. So it's pretty cool. And then I seen you went to Auburn, right? So you go from small high school into Auburn, which is obviously a big school.
Yeah. So I could actually tell you a little bit how I got into pest control based off that.
Gotcha.
I ended up coming to Auburn, graduated from here, and then I went to work. First company I worked for, I didn't do anything pest control related for the first 10 years that I was in the workforce out of, post school. And so they moved me to Huntsville, Alabama, the first company I was with. And I stayed in that area for about 10 years. In that time, I got married. I had a 2-year-old and a 1-week-old. And I had worked for some great companies though. I had got leadership roles in Frito-Lay. I was currently working for Airmark, and both of those, in some perspective, or at that time, they were both $14 billion companies. And so when I came into Terminex, I'll skip ahead for 1 second. Everybody thought Terminex was this large company, and it is. But for me, it felt really tiny compared to what I was used to. But it's funny. I had a recruiter from Terminex that reached out to me about coming to work in management for Terminex. And at first I told her I wasn't interested. And then a few weeks later, I think she may have sent me the same thing, out of mistake. And I was at home because my son had been born. And so I was like, I'm just going to take this call and hear what she has to say. I had a good job where I was at Airmark. And so she pitches the deal about coming to work at Terminex. And I just told her, look, I hate bugs. I was like, I don't think this is for me. Like, where do you need somebody? And she said, well, ideally you would live in Auburn, Alabama. I said, well, if that's the case, I'm interested. Huh. And so it was getting us closer to family with 2 small kids. My primary objective was, hey, if this doesn't work out, they were relocating us and I had to stay 1 year. I remember telling my dad, cause he was like, you're crazy, got a good job. And he couldn't see the vision behind it. And I had no vision behind it other than we were 6 hours from my parents with 2 small kids, and we would really be good to be 2 hours away from my parents with 2 small kids. Yeah. And so anyway, we moved, my wife agreed, and she started being a stay-at-home mom. So we moved, and man, 3 months in, I just, like most people, I fell in love with the industry. And looking back, I have no idea why the hell I did. I loved the people, but I was a glorified termite technician for the first 3 months of my career because we didn't have any staff. It was a small market. But it was the first time I really felt like I was running my own business, my own operation. I had a great, region director that I worked for, that it eventually hired me, and, it gave me a chance to lead a team. And I really felt like a coach, and we took that, my success there was, Terminex. I've heard people badmouth Terminex, anywhere you go. I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic for me. I learned more there, than I could have ever imagined. And it helped propel me to next stages in life. I ended up only staying in Auburn for 2 years. My wife likes to remind me of that. We ended up building a house here. I think I was in it for 9 months. And then I took over, with Marietta, Georgia, essentially Northwest Georgia. And so we moved to Atlanta, a little over 2 years after being in Auburn. And career-wise, that was one of the best decisions I ever made because it truly showed me, and Jonah, you've probably been through this before, but it really showed me what kind of leader I could be. I took over at that time, I think we were right at 12 million in revenue. And in the 3 years I was there, when I left, I think we were just over 14 million, but I had a management team, so I was actually working less than I was running a $2 million Terminex office, running a $14 million operation with, roughly 70 employees in Atlanta, Georgia. And so that was just a great, for me, I kind of knew I would always have my foot in this industry no matter what. And I didn't plan on leaving. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Hold up, quick pause. If you're on a pest control company or fertilization weed control company, you're not in our Facebook group, you're choosing the harder path. Every operator that's in there is skipping years of mistakes because people are actually sharing what's working right now. So stop trying to brute force your way through growth alone. Search Pest Control Millionaires on Facebook or click the link below. And now let's get back to it. That's awesome. I'm gonna rewind and ask a question. The recruiter, how did she reach out to you?
LinkedIn.
Figured.
Yeah, just sent me a message on LinkedIn, and I'm still connected with her on LinkedIn. I think she actually works for Nike now, of all places. But yeah, still connected to her. And looking back, one of the things we don't do well in pest control a lot of times is give branch managers credit where it's due. A lot of times with job postings or titles, and I'm not a big title person, But when you tell somebody you're a branch manager, you're hiring for a branch manager, it comes across as like, they're managing a movie gallery or a Blockbuster, and it doesn't take into effect everything that somebody's managing. Here in when I was running Terminex here where I live now, I mean, we were pretty spread out. And in Atlanta, if you look at where we were in Marietta, our closest offices to the west or to the north was Chattanooga, Tennessee, Huntsville, Alabama, and Birmingham, Alabama. And that's a ton of territory in between for all those branches. So the fact that, somebody's a branch manager, people tend to think, oh, well, you just manage this little office here. No, you've got employees spread out everywhere and customers everywhere. And it's a great experience. And I still feel like it's a great industry. One of my nephews just graduated, unfortunately, from Alabama, but he did graduate a couple of years ago. And so I helped him get on at Wayne's. I got a lot of friends at Wayne's Pest Control. Love that company. And so he's there working in inside sales, and he absolutely loves it. He loves what he's doing. He loves Wayne's, and I think he'll make a career of it. And I think once you get some people in the door, they realize just how good it is. I think they'll stay and like it just as much as I have.
Yeah. And then how did you get plucked up from running a $2 million company and put into running a $12, $14 million company? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think, one, on the backs of some great people that trusted me to lead them and grow. When I got to Auburn with Terminex, the first 3 weeks I trained with a gentleman in Huntsville, Alabama. And every conference call I was on, the Auburn office was the dumpster fire. Like we talked about all the positives, and then Auburn was, and I remember asking that guy, his name's Joe Magyar, still a great friend. I said, what did I get myself into? And he was like, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. And I was like, dude, this sounds like I'm taking over, something tragic. And did I set myself up for failure? And he gave me a great piece of advice. He said, you got one guy there that can sell his ass off. I would take him to the nicest place he wants to eat dinner and just ask him what he needs. And so this guy, still a great friend of mine today, named Mike Ballard. I came down, we went to a hibachi Japanese place here in Auburn. And I said, man, I was like, what do you need? And this guy was selling his own, he was an outside sales rep. He was selling his own stuff like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then the first of the next week, he was installing his own termite jobs, doing some of his own pest starts, that sort of thing. And he luckily had been applying for jobs that had not found one yet. And if not for that, I don't know for certain that I would be sitting here today and have had as much success as I've had. And he and I kind of became a team. And that first year that I was there, because I started at the beginning of the year, that first year we were a top 10 branch in Terminex. And so we made some hires. We had a team of about 4. I think when I left there in 2 years, we had a little over 10 people, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome.
Which was really big for this market and for this office. And so, that really let us ramp up, Jonas, and start hiring people, start building, bring another salesperson in. Now get 2, let this guy learn from, really from Mike and see what he did. And Mike made him successful. And I really got to where I could handle the operations and the customer service side. And we had a really good understanding that, hey, Mike understood, here's our goals for the month. This is what we need to hit in sales. I'm going to go out and execute it. And so everybody said we would not be able to do in the second year what we did in the first year. And we did. We crushed it then too. We were again a top 10 branch the second year. And so they did some shuffling around and changes. And Marietta opened up. And there was a gentleman named Derek Sanders who was over that area. And he and I just hit it off. And I put a lot of trust in him. And so we made the leap to move to Atlanta, and it was just an amazing experience. Honestly, looking back now, just what I learned, going there, the fact that they gave me that much trust to go from such a small office to such a large one. And then we had such great success, I feel like, in that market in Marietta. It was truly the ultimate confidence builder for me and showed me really what I could do from a leader as well.
That's awesome. When you asked the sales guy, which I probably already know the answer, what he wanted or what he needed, what was it? A technician?
Yeah, it would just get his work done so he could go out and sell.
Yeah.
You know, and that guy, he's still one of my best friends today. And he would tell you, man, I love developing people. And he is probably one of my favorite, I say, success stories today, just based on the fact that I can remember, you know, you love to see people's kind of priorities and mindsets change a little bit. But, you know, this guy, we used to get a sales report every week when we were at Terminex that showed us where all our salespeople ranked in the state. And so this guy has more talent than anybody I'd ever seen at selling and closing the deal, right? That's a unique skill set in and of itself. And so I remember sitting him down one day and I say, hey, you know, I know we're not as big as Mobile or Birmingham from a market standpoint. And I said, but with your skill level, I was like, does it not bother you that you're not in the top 5 of this sales report that we get every week? And he said, no, not really. And that kind of shook me. I was like, it doesn't bother you. He said, man, he said, I know how much I've got to work and how much I've got to sell to bring in X dollar amount. And the rest of the time I can be at home with my family. And we started having conversations around like, you know, you're focused on money right now. Think about the future. Think about building for your kids, different house, growing and that sort of thing. And so I watched that guy go from that mindset to where over the years where he's, you know, been leading a successful business, you know, managing and doing what I used to do and pouring into people. And now he's that guy. And so that's one of my favorite, you know, stories is to just look back on what my relationship with him was not just able to do for me, but able to do in his life and his family's life. I love his kids just like he loves my kids. And so being able to see that kind of growth in people, man, that's what I live for. And that's what I love.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then what was the biggest change from going to the $2 million branch to the $14 million branch? Yeah, you said there's less work, but there's a lot more.
Yeah, delegation.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. You know, when I was in the small office, I didn't have a service manager. You know, I didn't have a CSR in-house. I didn't have any of that stuff. So everything that flowed through me. And my wife would tell you, the first 6 months that we were here building this thing out, I was in the office every day, probably by 7 a.m., maybe 6 a.m. And then some nights I didn't get home till 8 o'clock. I mean, we were doing everything. We didn't have shelving in the base. Like we were building shelving. We didn't have basic stuff. And there were just little things that this office had been neglected on for a while. And so it was really just, 6 months of foundation, putting the foundation in people, putting the foundation in our ability to go out and service. And then the rest kind of took care of its own. And then when I got to Atlanta, the difference was, I will say, the management team that I walked into in Atlanta, they were studs, man. I mean, still to this day, I would put that group that I had when I walked into Marietta, Georgia, as some of the best pest control operators I've ever worked with. And I was really blessed that they accepted me and trusted me, and we worked super well together. And they made that machine go. And every vision that I had, not that they wouldn't give me crap about some idea that I had, or they love to call me Mr. Spreadsheet, but they still backed me on it. And when I tell you that team went out and delivered, it was an awesome team. And I still love all those guys. We still talk as much as we possibly can, but, and they're still rock stars in their own mind at things they're doing today. But they really showed me, if you have the buy-in, you have the people, you have proper delegation and things like that, you can truly be successful. And over my career, I've looked back at things that I've learned since then, and I've always go back and wonder, man, if we had plugged this in Marietta, how much more could we have done, with that team that we had there of just rock stars. So
it's really cool. With that same question, what was your day-to-day of how do your day-to-day change? What was your day-to-day like running the $14 million branch?
It was definitely more relationship driven and audit driven. When I was in Auburn, it was more of a boots on the ground. I mean, making sure everything got done, the services got done. I was scheduling everything. It could have been, at Terminex, you did crawl space encapsulations, attic insulation, a little bit of everything. And so when I was in Auburn, even when we were running, and we got super successful, a great example of what I did, we started selling these different bird jobs. Mike and Jason, the other salesman, we were selling bird jobs, bat jobs. We had a large university, Tuskegee University, that we did a lot of work for. And so we would go down there. We had to rent these big boom lifts. Well, we were so busy, I didn't have time to have somebody go get certified on the boom lift. So I went and got certified on the boom lift, which in turn meant for a while, I was doing most of those bat jobs. And I actually really enjoyed that part of it. But that was just kind of what I had to do to make business go. And we adapted, as things would slow down, we get somebody else certified. So I wouldn't have to do every single job there. And so if you look at how that transitioned to Atlanta, it was kind of where, I was more so able to delegate those things, but also help the team figure out ways to get that done so that they weren't doing it. It just gave you a lot more freedom to plan and solve problems rather than put out fires. That's probably the best way I can explain it.
When you're at your first branch, did you have all the same spreadsheets that you had in? Gotcha.
No, the spreadsheets have definitely evolved. And now I'm consulting with some companies now. And so now with ChatGPT, the spreadsheets have definitely got a little more involved. And they don't take me 10 hours to do and things like that. But as technology has evolved, it's one of the best things our industry, I think, will see. It's just the advancement of technology along the way.
Yeah, and it's simple things like with AI, like we have an AI bot, right? That just calls accounts receivable. So now we take some people on our team that was doing this. Now we can take them, put them on project work that's going to move the company forward, let the automation go collect money. In the first 30 days, it collected like $130,000. Like,
absolutely.
Incredible.
Absolutely.
So it's all these small things that everyone across the board that listens to the podcast that hasn't evolved with AI yet, they're just going to have to move that way.
Yeah.
It's like, because like, of course, like employees are getting more expensive, harder to find, but at the same time, you have such great technology and tools that are in our tool belt. Like now you just got to go use them. And I think there's gonna be a lot more things coming out here in the near future, like with route automation. Like you not even need a person that just does all your scheduling. Like it's just gonna be all automated. And I was talking to a friend of mine with their automations now. Like it'll recognize that there's weather coming the next day. And if it realizes that there's bad weather, it'll say that all these routes will get skipped and it'll get pushed off for the next day. It'll reroute everything for you without it even doing anything. Like it's a crazy time to be in business for sure.
No, there's I can't mention them by name, but there's since I've gotten into this business on my own, I've got some great relationships with private equity groups out there. And so there's one that I've known for a while, and they have a heavy investment in car washes. And so I got to visit their office a while back, and this private equity group is a little different than some because the PE group themselves have a huge support staff for the businesses that they partner with and they operate. So if you need their back end services, they can handle your marketing, customer service, and they've got an entire floor in this really large building that is just dedicated to supporting their businesses. And on the car wash side, one thing that was really cool was, everything they have is kind of built out in Power BI. And the neat thing is their forecasting models build in weather to everything. So they can tell their operators when what to expect from a revenue standpoint, what they need to have from a staffing standpoint based on the weather forecast that's coming up over the next 3 to 5 days. And I thought that was really, I had not seen that part before because most models are just kind of stagnant, right? They're not pulling in those outside outliers like that. And when I saw that, I was like, man, that is really, if I'm an operator and I can kind of plan my people around, what the weather's going to do without me having to manually do it. It's a pretty awesome tool to have at your disposal.
I agree. And I don't think it's ever going to I could be wrong. So maybe I shouldn't say that, but I don't think it's ever going to replace the people that you have. You're still going to need people to run it, and to do other things. Right. So, I don't think it's going to replace the people that we have, but it's just going to help them as a tool, and it's just going to make our lives more efficient, as humans.
I agree.
How long did you stay? I think you still live in it. Do you still live in Atlanta now?
Yeah, still in Auburn. I moved back to Auburn. I was with Terminex for right at 5 years. I got a great opportunity to start a business with a friend of mine's brother back here in Auburn. And that was something I'd really wanted to do. In general, I just never knew exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
And so this gentleman gave me the opportunity to do that. And man, we had a really great run with it. We moved back to Auburn, took a huge risk and had some tremendous success starting a pest control company from scratch. That pest control company is still going, still doing well. But I was there for about 2.5 years. And in that time frame of, building out a pest control company, we went from roughly, let's say 0 to close to 2.5 million in 2.5 years. And it was just tremendous success. I wouldn't change it for anything. I think sometimes you have different visions in the company, and that's fine. And so I exited after 2.5 years, but learned some extremely valuable things there. One of the biggest things that I learned and took away from there was EOS.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever done I know you got 10. I saw your 10X book earlier, but
yeah, we run EOS. We've been running for like 6 years. We self-implemented. Maybe it's been longer. 6-7 years been running EOS, but we self-implemented a long time ago, and we've changed it to make it a better model for us. There's some things I just didn't really care for that we adopted. But yeah, we still have our level 10 meetings every single Wednesday at 11 o'clock. We just did our yearly offsite a week and a half ago with all of our leadership teams. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, we did use an implementer, which I think was great for us because it kept us on track. If you want to use the EOS terms. And so when I think about some of the successful things that we did, that company still pushes today, we created, really a business model based around core values. And a lot of times when you go to companies, I would challenge you when you meet a CEO or someone, ask them what their core values are. And if they can't tell you, then they're just, they're BS. They're just on a card or on the wall and nobody pays attention to them. But what I really learned with, going through EOS and that one key step of establishing your core values, you're in a room with your leadership team and everybody's picking words that they want their people to embody and represent. And at the time, the way our implementer set it up, we did not know we were laying out our core values. He just kind of asked us, hey, if you can write down 3 to 5 words that would embody somebody that you want to work for you, that you see, has the vision of your company, write those words down. And so we all did. We put all of them on the board. There was probably 50 of them. And then you kind of kill them. And that created the core values that we went to work with, in the business. We made that our mantra, our motto. We lived and breathed it. We talked about it every single day. My old business partner, I know that they share stuff a lot. They're constantly posting still about core values. So it hasn't died, basically is what I'm trying to say. And so I had lunch a while back with one of these rock star managers I mentioned that worked for me in Atlanta. And he was like, when you look back, was there anything you would do different? And I said, man, I would EOS. And I started telling him, because he's a leader in his church now where he is. And so I was telling him about this model and kind of how it is. And the key thing that you just touched on that I could think of, man, is the weekly meeting. I was a stickler every Wednesday at I think we did it at 3 o'clock. Every Monday at 3 o'clock, My team came in my office. I had a big table in there. We sit down, and I had a task of like, here's what we need to accomplish for the week. And looking back, I don't know that I hardly ever followed up on any of it. You know, I'm sure I know I did probably on sales stuff, but on small stuff,
Yeah,
I don't know
definitely the
how
sales
great my
stuff.
follow-up was,
Yeah.
you know? And so, and then every week on Monday, I would sit there, I'd get my yellow legal pad and I'd make a new list. And I'm like, and so I look back now, if I just had that working to-do list in my, you know, my rocks and things like that, that would be something that I think could have really catapulted us to the next level. So,
Yeah, I agree. How was this start? How is it going from, a $14 million company and then back to a startup?
you know, it was a learning curve for sure. You know, while Terminex was a phenomenal place, I didn't know a lot about the industry outside of Terminex. You know, we didn't really do Pest World, for example. We didn't do all these different, I didn't listen to podcasts or anything at that point in time. I didn't know all these different things and the way to service. And one thing my old business partner did that was good is we had a couple of, one main consultant who had I think he's retired now. His name was Mike Davis. Great guy. He had worked for a company, oddly enough, full circle, EPS in Florida. A lot of my former service coworkers came from EPS, and a couple of them had worked with this gentleman at a company called Bug Off. And he was just a great guy, but he was a visionary. And I could not wrap my head, Jonah, around removing like monthly billing. I couldn't wrap my head around it in the beginning. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And then we actually did triannual service. And I thought that was even dumber than monthly billing. And Mr. Mike was just this super, super nice guy and just, made you, he could just make you believe in him. And he was like, Lee, if you just give it a chance, it'll work. And so we did. And so we started trying to sell it that way, push it that way, approach it that way. And once we were able to sell it, I started realizing like the customer, and I still see this today in people I consult with who say, well, customers aren't going to like it if you only come every 3 months, every 4. The customer is expecting you to tell them what they need at the end of the day. That's why you're the professional, right? And I could not get out of my own way when we first started at doing that until I actually saw it in action. And it was like, the customer doesn't know that you usually bill at the time of service. Like the customer wants to pay however you're trying to pay. Like, here's what we offer, and when you think about it, when I talk to companies now today, I'm like, go somewhere, go to Netflix and tell them how you want to pay. They don't give a damn how you want to pay. This is how we charge. You want the service or not? And I tell people today, I was telling a friend of mine in Arizona just a week ago, he's got some customers on monthly billing, some are not. And I'm like, if they're not on monthly billing, they're not your customer. Like you've got to draw a line in the sand that this is how you're going to set your business up. And so little things like that was a learning curve, but also helped me prepare for next stages in my career, learning all that, going through all that. When I was at Terminex, everybody griped at times about lack of support that you had, that sort of thing. We don't have, support for this. I challenge those people to go start a company from scratch. And then you realize
there's no support. It's a lonely place.
Yeah. Terminex really supported me a ton. I just had no idea what all was going on the back end, but we made it work. We made it successful. I got to where I really enjoyed things like building out SOPs, getting back in and training people who had never been in the industry and just, kind of starting all over, but a little different too. And that's really where my love for M&A came from. Was working in this small startup. We, at Terminex in Atlanta, I had got to do a little bit of integration stuff. Terminex had bought some companies and we had to tuck them in, none of the fun stuff with M&A,
Right.
Yeah. And so I got to do some of that. And then, we started this small company. I kind of had a business fall into my lap. I reached out to a local guy, and he was like, yeah, I got a buddy that wants to sell a business. And that kind of led to our first small acquisition. I was able to find a couple of other one-man routes to buy. And so out of that 2.5 million in the first 2.5 years, we probably purchased about 600,000 of revenue, but the rest was all organic. You know, really my business partner was really good at SEO. We had our Facebook was dialed in. We had an inside sales team that really drove a lot of sales off of Facebook. I know some people struggle with that, but we had really become very successful with that. And then our Google seemed to work. We had some great branding that kind of played into that. But I really saw, I wish we could have bought more companies, because I'd met a lot of companies, and we had to be pretty strategic with the funds that, that were available on what we were trying to buy. But that's really where I got my love for interacting with sellers or business owners, and kind of talking to them about their next steps, that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
That's where, and then Certus kind of catapulted that even further. But
yeah, so that's pretty much, that's a great transition, how you go from exiting and then into Certus.
Yeah, man, I had one of the, with some success with a smaller company, obviously you get some private equity interest, or people reaching out and just kind of asking you about what about what the plans are and that sort of thing. And so a gentleman that was with one of the private equity groups that had reached out, he and I had worked together at Terminex. And so about 6 months prior to me leaving my business partner, he had asked me about, hey, I've just joined Certus, would love to have you on the team. And I wasn't really at a point then to leave. So fast forward 6 months, and I called him and I was like, hey, do you still need somebody? And he said, yeah. And so they made a home for me at Certus. And so far, career-wise, that's probably my favorite place I've ever worked. It was one of the best decisions I made in my career in terms of joining a team that truly knew more than I did about the industry, and knew more about a lot of things. And I got to learn and kind of soak up things, kind of like a sponge, from a lot of great people who had experienced a lot of things that I had not gone through yet. And was really blessed to be put in the position that I was, and really had a blast there. When I first came into Certus, when I say they made a home for me, my official title was Director of Sales Enablement. And, Certus had gone through a transition, leadership transition. They were really trying to push outside sales and growing outside sales and inside sales. The gentleman that brought me in there was their chief revenue officer. And so I was really just trying to support him in any way, shape, or fashion that I could. At that time, we didn't have any brochures. We didn't have a lot of marketing material, from like handouts, door hangers, things just to inform customers about what we sold and who we were. We had some good sales leaders in place, and my job was really supporting them. One of those guys, Rodney Ritter, who's still there, I just asked, like, man, what do you need me to do to support you? Well, I need you to go do some sales training, like, in some different markets. And so we didn't really have any sales training per se. So I put together our sales training model. Using some other, some tried and true things, we put together a 7-step sales, process. And I just started traveling to different markets, trying to teach it and trying to make our salespeople better, and support Rodney and another gentleman named Buddy and what they could do. And I think we had some good success there. I built some great relationships kind of across our company, and in some of the branding stuff that I was doing, got to really interact with Dave Bradford, our CEO, a lot, and kind of pick up on his vision for the company. And in some of the conversations that I was able to have with him, and I think he understood my ability to build relationships. I guess probably about 4 months in, they asked me about taking over, M&A on the East. And I don't remember what my first offer was, but he could have offered me less, and I probably still would have taken it.
Right.
But but it was really good, man. We had a, being able to do that, go out with I think right now, Certus is probably one of the strongest brand names in the industry. Not from, just based on how they started and to where they are now, their acquisition, that whole one thing I've learned about getting out into the open, and helping people with deals and interacting with people, we really created a great M&A process at Certus that works. And so I was able to kind of see that and what made that successful. But, when I was working there, getting to go out and represent that brand and interact with business owners and sellers, I couldn't have asked for a better experience to kind of propel me into the next stages of my career and get ready to do some different things.
That's cool. What was your day-to-day like on the M&A side?
Man, it could be anything. There was, typically the biggest thing that you were doing was finding ways to build relationships. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Like, I'm a relationship guy. Getting people to answer the phone and understand, like, hey, I understand even today in what I do, when I reach out to people, I think people still view a lot of us M&A guys as used car salesmen. I get that sometimes, but we really just love building relationships. I do more kind of coaching or answering questions than I do selling for people. Out of 100 conversations, maybe one or two people let me help them with their sales. So there's a lot more conversations just geared around, what they make it do better, that kind of thing. Because one of the unique things that I bring to the table, I feel like, is I work for Terminex, which is the largest. I've started one from scratch, and I've worked for private equity. And so I've seen a little bit of everything. And I feel like I can answer a lot of questions, that relate to that and that relate to people that they may have questions about. It could be about who they sell to, but it's also a lot of questions around. Literally yesterday, I got text around churn rates, and then what should my accounts receivable be 31 to 60? And I'm answering those questions. They're not signed up with me. It's just relationships that I have, and they know that I'll answer the question because I love interacting with them and answering the questions. So, but on the day-to-day side, that's what all it was trying to focus on how many relationships I can build, and then any deals that we had going, constantly supporting, the analyst and the strategy people, just what do they need? You're constantly involved in some way, shape, or fashion with 3 to 5 different deals that are going on, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, you said over the East, so it was on the East side. So, were you trying to keep it more local to where you were, your branch that you were at, or it didn't matter where it was?
Yeah, it didn't necessarily matter. A lot of times, I think with Certus or any company, they're going to have a strategy of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So a lot of my focus at the time was trying to grow our existing branches, our existing footprint.
Right.
And so I think any company that can be the same model, if when you go out and you find let's say a $5 million business, your ability to tuck that into something is not that great. Like you typically don't want to tuck in a $5 million operation. I think that's one reason companies like Orkin have had such great success with their M&A strategy. They've taken some great brands and they just let them stay there and grow those brands.
Agreed.
Probably the best at it is Antecemix. You look what Antecemix has done, and they've gone to like Wayne's. They found great leaders like Sean Hollis and just let them grow this existing amazing thing they already have and make it better and bigger. And so it just depends on the strategic side of things, but primarily my time at Certus, we were focused on trying to grow some of our branches. And then we did, I did have one acquisition that was a standalone, but it just really depends on what the business needs. And most companies are going to look at any opportunity.
For sure.
It just depends on if they can make it fit the right way.
Definitely. So. Was it like for you, was it like a lot of like cold calling? Was it just going out networking, events, dropping off donuts, or?
It's a mix, man. Events is a great one. But a ton of cold calling, tons of cold calling. And you try, even today, you try to do as much research as possible. And, I mentioned that recruiter, same thing. I do a ton of LinkedIn, trying to hit people up on LinkedIn.
Sure.
I'm in a lot of groups on Facebook. I'll answer questions on a Facebook platform, or somebody may reach out to me and ask me a question, but a little bit of everything. And again, it's not trying to push somebody to sell as soon as possible. It's trying to, hey, if I can help you with anything, whether it's, how to make your technician service better, or how to make your routing more efficient, or when you're ready to sell, that's the same thing. I just only get paid really for one of them, but I still love doing the other. That was one of the things I loved about being at Certus, was I still got to do a lot of that stuff. John Judge, the VP of Ops, he and I thought a lot alike operations wise, and I got to travel and still train sales teams, and I still got to work with some of our technicians on selling and servicing, maybe where John needed me to plug something in. And so I wasn't always just doing M&A, and I really loved that part of it, because M&A, it can get lonely sometimes because you don't have a team of people, and you don't have employees working for you, but still being able to interact with the field and get out in the field periodically is still something that I love to do. And that's what I really enjoy doing there.
That's cool. I asked Paul Gianamore and Scarlett the same question. So I'm curious to hear your take. What is the perfect branch to you?
So the perfect branch, one, has got to be with a positive leader that sees the vision. That would probably be when I start off anything, that's got to be in place. And then they've got to understand what the goals are for the business. We want to have the right people in the right seat. And then we want to strategically go out and sell to the right customer that fits our model. And a lot of that can do with placement on where you put that office, what city you put it in. But outside of the people metrics, it's tight density. It's a great price point. And it's where your technicians can go out, earn a living without killing themselves. And you don't have to stretch to make the business get results. I see that a lot of places I consult, to where their marketing's not working. So they just keep expanding their footprint, and their technicians are just running ragged, and they have high turnover. It's like, well, why do I have high turnover? Well, your guys have 3 hours of drive time every day. Right. But it's focusing on that core, not expanding too soon, and really trusting in what you're trying to build. But that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Cool. What about as far as revenue? Where do you like it?
For an office, I love that. I'm probably more on Emily from Aero Exterminators. I kind of love her mindset on that, keeping it less than 5 million. So around that $3 million mark. If you ever heard Emily Kendrick speak, if you go to Atlanta, Georgia, I feel like there's an Aero Exterminators on every corner.
For real. Yeah.
And her mindset, she's got, actually, I think she was on Gianna Moore's podcast several years ago, and she speaks to this, and she talks about giving people more opportunities. I mean, she wants her people that want to achieve more, giving them an opportunity to be leaders. And the only way to do that is to create more offices the more they grow. And so as they get to a certain point, instead of doubling down on profitability and revenue, Emily splits them to give people, and I think her employees get that because they have such a high employee satisfaction rating, but that's why she does it. She could easily probably cut out a chunk of offices in the Atlanta, Georgia area, I know, and be 10 times more profitable. But she doesn't choose to do so because it is so much easier to grow. You talk about that Auburn office I started in. It's so much easier to grow that versus Marietta from a revenue standpoint.
Agreed.
Because
yeah,
you
1,000%.
feel it every day. So much easier. And so I would tell you, Paul's got a great episode that had her on it, and probably and it may have been 2023 or 2022. I can't even remember. And she dives into that. And that's, I think, the best mindset you can have, though.
What was her name?
Emily Kendrick, the CEO of Aero Exterminators out of Atlanta.
Got it. Paul Gianamore, he probably stole this from her now that I think back on it, but he said his favorite is like that 2 to 3 million mark. And then Scarlett said, I'm gonna butcher this exact, but like 12% growth per year at like, and there was no revenue, it was like 12% growth and like 20% profit or something like that is what she said.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we follow that same thing. Like our perfect branch is like $2 million. Again, you don't need a super great leader, but it can be really good. You can move people up from like, from a technician that's really, really good that wants to be a branch manager and pop them into another location. That's all we do. It's the same model we run.
Yeah. You don't really even, I mean, the leader standpoint, I think too many people focus sometimes on the metrics.
Yeah.
You really need a leader that one is going to try to do what your company goals and initiatives are.
Yeah. Fits the culture. Yeah.
You need that culture, and culture is if you don't have the culture piece, man, it's just, you're losing the battle already.
Yeah. And I feel like probably why like a lot of our offices have been successful is because we take someone from that was in our older market, move them into a new one, let them run the branch. So they already have that culture ingrained. They already know what we're looking for, and they just crush.
Yeah. And if you're doing EOS, man, culture, I still think it begins with establishing great core values, and everybody you hire has to fit that model. And it's really hard sometimes. I tell people all the time, don't try to hire technicians. Not that anything's wrong with hiring a former technician. There's not. But, one of the best hires I made in the startup company that I was with is we hired a guy who was an assistant manager from CVS. He just wanted to get outside more. And I think he's still there today, if I'm not mistaken, but he was probably one of the best employees we had. He just loved being able to drive around, not be in a store all day, talk to different people. And, in terms of core values, he hit all of them. That's cool. But had zero pest experience.
Yeah. So, we've been talking for an hour already. So if you have to go, I understand, but I want to obviously talk about what you're up to today and how you went from, working for service and then obviously going on your own again.
Yeah. So made the transition. Dave Bradford gave me full blessing. All he said was just bring me some deals. And so that was kind of my transition there. But just something I had thought about for a while. And so Trivie Business Brokers, as I mentioned to you earlier, my kids are Trip and Evie. And so, it's something I'd had in the back of my mind for a long time that if I ever did anything, it was kind of a name that I really wanted to use. And, man, whether it was through visiting Pest World or different places in the industry, at some point in time over the last 3 to 5 years, I just built tons of relationships, and I love the M&A side of things. I will tell you, when you're selling a business, a broker is more than somebody that just handles the transaction to take a fee, right? And I think, the first business that I sold or helped sell was a great friend of mine's, and I think he really saw pretty early on the value that I brought to the table in terms of just helping him understand what was coming across to him, helping him, break down some of this information that he was getting from different places, but also finding the best value for his company. Because I always tell people, not going through a broker, whether it's me, Stuart House is an amazing guy, Rand Holland, Greg Clendenin, you've already mentioned Potomac. All of us have the same abilities, I feel like, to go out and you want to get the best value for your company. And somebody can call you today to buy it, and you may not be their number one priority. There may be somebody in that area or somebody looking to buy in that area that values your company more than theirs does. And, the classic question that I get every single time I talk to somebody is, well, what do you think I can get? And it's such a loaded question. And I try to give people like a wide range, but you just never, really know until you take it to market. And so right now, there are some hotbeds in the industry. Phoenix has been one for a while, still super, super hot. I think the absolute hottest one right now is Texas. I mean, Texas is just crazy. I have more people calling me,
Interesting.
trying to get into Texas right now than anywhere. The Carolinas is still really hot, but it's still, the industry is still great for those that are ready to transition. And that's really why I got into it. You know, there's a lot of people out there that I feel like just have questions and just need help, you know, going through that process. And, I love doing it for them. And it's been a good ride so far. I've found a little bit of a niche in helping some smaller companies. That's really helped me get my bank account going and keep everything flowing, which is awesome. And so we just closed, officially Monday of this week was my sixth deal.
Oh yeah. Congratulations.
Number 7 coming up, on June 1. And so things are rolling. My consulting work is picking up as well. Love doing that. Actually had to jump off a call before, this, from a consulting call, but you know, it's just something that I had on my heart for a while. And, it's been a great ride so far.
Yeah. I wrote down this question as we were talking, because you talked about the industry. What do you think the industry looks like in the next 3 to 5 years? Do you see the multiples going up? Do you see them coming down? What do you think the industry looks like as a whole?
Man, if you would have asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have told you that I see the multiples coming down. I think what I see in certain markets is changes in multiples. And I think it depends on the number of players in the market. Like Florida, for example, I think is still a really great market, but I don't think it was as hot as it was 3 years ago. You know, I think it was a lot easier to get a higher multiple in Florida 3 years ago than it is today. I had this conversation with a friend of mine in Phoenix yesterday. You know, right now in Phoenix, there's some big players. There's actually like 4, and they're keeping that price point really, really great for people that are selling. And so this gentleman I talked to yesterday, he was like, man, I think I'm just going to hang on for a couple of more years. What do you think? And I said, well, I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but I'll tell you, if 1 or 2 of these people that are out there now as buyers, if they sell to a strategic, in 2 years, you're not going to be worth more than you are today, because you've eliminated a couple of buyers that are really out there driving that.
Of course, yeah.
Now, I've got some friends in the Carolinas who are great business people. And, you know, this guy, I'll mess with him all the time. If I talk to him like, hey, you ready to sell your business? And I know he's not. He knows it's a joke. And he's like, man, in 10 years, I'll give you a call. And that's a great philosophy. Like that's where he's at, is in 10 years, who knows what it's going to be like, but that's his plan. And so I tell people, like, depending on what market you are, if you're teeter-tottering, you know, 1 or 2 years is not going to make you a substantial amount of money. If you're a $2 million company today, the chances of you being a $5 million company next year is probably pretty slim. Been in business 10 years, you got it at 2. You know, and sometimes I have to question what's in their head that's going to suddenly add $3 million worth of revenue.
Agreed. I had this conversation yesterday. Same exact conversation.
Yeah, I do think in the next 3 to 5 years, I think this industry is still going to be steady like it is now. I think you're going to have pockets like it is now. It may not be Phoenix and Texas in 3 to 5 years, right? It may come back around to Florida. I think the Carolinas hasn't really peaked yet because there's not as many players there, but I think you're going to see more and more people. I think you're seeing it now navigate. I think Alabama in 3 to 5 years, with some of the influx of people that we've had come in and start businesses in Alabama, I think you're going to see it get more and more, you know, prevalent. So I don't ever see it dying. There's too many, as I go to conferences and meet people, there are too many great people in this industry that get in it every day for it to ever just be like, well, that's not a big M&A market, or that's not a big industry anymore. And there's still so many, if you look at the NPMA data, there's still so many customers out there that don't have pest control.
For real.
There's still so many.
I know.
And that's kind of a unique thing. You know, there's so many people to go out there and target and get. And so I I don't plan on leaving the industry. I plan on continuing to do what I'm doing now, because I think it's just going to stay, as relevant as it has been.
That's awesome. Yeah, I said when I got into the industry that I was going to go on a 20-year run. It's the start of year 6, so we got 15 more years to go. Who knows by then? Like, and that could change year by year, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. If I'll put all your information in the bio too, but if people want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
Man, you can, LinkedIn is probably the best way, LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm super active on there. I would just tell you to hit me up. I think you've got my email and my cell phone number, but that's another amazing way. I always tell people, even if you just have some general questions, I love to answer them. Guy I talked to yesterday, he knows another broker that I know, and I'm as honest as I can be. I'm like, look, even if you use that guy, here's what I would do. Right. So I'm not a snake oil salesman. I'm going to try to shoot it to you straight.
Yeah. And I think that you have such a good reputation in the industry.
I think so.
Amongst everyone that I've talked to that knows you, they also the same thing. Lee's a stud. He's such a great guy, just humble, very down to earth. And obviously we connected right away. And I appreciate that about you. You have a ton of knowledge and experience to bring to the table. It's really, really cool to see what you're doing. And just congratulations on everything, man. But you're a killer.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on, and it's been great getting to know you and follow you and see all the success you're having. And so, man, can't wait till we see each other again. I'm pumped.
For sure. All right, brother. Take it easy.
All right, Jonas. See you.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for this show, but the podcast isn't free. Please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app. This makes a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions about your business or your personal life that you'd like answered by me or any of my podcast guests, please send an email to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And if you want to get in touch with me about our marketing class, we do a live version every Thursday night. Check out our website at pestcontrolmillionaires.com. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one.